Midnight Swan is here. It's quiet, it's late, and there's nothing you need to do right now. Tonight, we'll rest while listening to What If Bella Found Home in Beacon Hills. Let's move into the video. 3 days. I hadn't seen Edward in 3 days. He dropped me off at house after my birthday party disaster. I hadn't seen Alice or any of the other Cullens in 3 days. I had a worried feeling in the pit of my stomach. It wasn't the worry I usually experienced, like when I was studying for a test or being introduced to someone new. This wasn't a vague sense of anticipation. This was a gnawing sensation in my stomach. It made my skin crawl and my breath short. "Bella, are you all right?" Charlie asked me while I was eating breakfast this morning. This morning I was starving. I felt hungrier than I ever had before. I had already gone through 3 blueberry Pop-Tarts. I nodded, breaking apart my 4th one and plopping a big chunk into my mouth. I swallowed. "Yeah, just really hungry. I've never seen you eat so much. You have a small appetite for an even smaller girl. Guess I'm just hungry today. By the way, Edward called this morning." Charlie mentioned into his breakfast. "Thought he'd just slip that in slyly, did he?" "He did," I asked as the second piece of Pop-Tart slipped through my fingers and landed on the floor. Charlie looked at me disapprovingly. "He said he's going to meet you here after school." "Great." I smiled happily. I stood up, picked the Pop-Tart off the floor and put my plate in the sink. "I don't like how much power this boy has over you, Bells," Charlie said seriously as he did the same. "For 3 days the boy ignores you and you mope around the house, and the second he calls you're ecstatic." "I wouldn't call it ecstatic," I muttered. "Bella," Charlie said more seriously. "Dad, I'm going to be late for school. We'll talk about it later," I said, swinging my backpack over my shoulder and giving Charlie a quick peck on the cheek before running out the door. School passed quickly that day. The sense of worry was gone and was replaced with a sense of eager expectation. Before I knew it, I was home. I expected to see Edward's shiny Volvo in the driveway, but it was missing. The person himself, however, was standing by the door. I quickly parked the car and jumped out. My brief sense of happiness disappeared. The look on his face was guarded but grim. "Hey Edward," I said cautiously as I approached him. He was silent for a long moment and then said in an unemotional voice, "Come for a walk with me." Without waiting for a response, he took my hand and started walking towards the forest. A walk? He wants to go for a walk in the forest. I expected him to go a few steps into the woods and then let me climb piggyback style onto him and run. But we didn't, we kept walking. "Edward, where are we going?" I asked when we were well in the forest. "For a walk," he replied in the same gray voice. "Is there a destination?" "Yes, it's not much farther." It was much farther. I wasn't sure exactly how much time had passed, but I estimated at least an hour. I wanted to ask where we were going, but I knew he wouldn't answer it. So I focused on trying not to trip on the uneven ground. Suddenly Edward stopped. "Bella, we're leaving." I took a deep breath. This was acceptable, I reminded myself. We couldn't stay in Forks forever. But why now? I was ready to give up everything to be with Edward, but why so suddenly? Why now? "Another year," I started, but Edward turned around and interrupted me. He still had the same grim expression on his face. "Bella, it's time. How much longer could we stay in Forks, after all? Carlisle can barely pass for 30, and he's claiming 33 now. We'd have to start over soon regardless." His answer confused me. I thought the point of leaving was to let his family live in peace. Why did we have to leave if they were going? I stared at him, trying to understand what he meant. He stared back coldly. With a roll of nausea, I realized I'd misunderstood. "When you say we," I whispered, "I mean my family and myself." Each word separate and distinct. I shook my head back and forth mechanically, trying to clear it. He waited without any sign of impatience. It took a few minutes before I could speak. "Okay," I said. "I'll come with you." "You can't, Bella. Where we're going, it's not the right place for you. When you are is the right place for me. I'm no good for you, Bella. Don't be ridiculous." I wanted to sound angry, but it sounded like I was begging. "You're the very best part of my life. My world is not for you, Bella," he said grimly. "What happened with Jasper? That was nothing, Edward." "Nothing. You're right," he agreed. "It was exactly what was to be expected. You promised. In Phoenix. You promised that you would stay. As long as that was best for you," he interrupted to correct me. "No. This is not best for me, I said, my voice rising. He took a deep breath and stared, unseeingly, at the ground for a long moment. His mouth twisted the tiniest bit. When he finally looked up, his eyes were different, harder, like liquid gold had frozen solid. Bella, I don't want you to come with me. He spoke the words slowly and precisely, his cold eyes on my face, watching as I absorbed what he was really saying. There was a pause as I repeated the words in my head a few times, sifting through them for their real intent. You don't want me. I tried out the words, confused by the way they sounded, placed in that order. No. I stared uncomprehending, into his eyes. He stared back without apology. His eyes were like topaz, hard and clear and very deep. I felt I could see into them for miles and miles, yet nowhere in their depths could I see a contradiction to the words he'd spoken. Well, that changes things. I was surprised by how calm and reasonable my voice sounded. It must be because I was so numb. I couldn't realize what he was telling me. It still didn't make any sense. He looked away into the trees as he spoke again. Of course, I'll always love you, in a way. But what happened the other night made me realize that it's time for a change. Because I'm tired of pretending to be something I'm not, Bella. I am not human. He looked back, and the icy planes of his perfect face were not human. I've let this go on much too long, and I'm sorry for that. Don't. My voice was just a whisper now. Awareness was beginning to seep through me, trickling like acid through my veins. Don't do this. He stared at me and I could already see from his eyes that my words were far too late. He already had. Something in my stomach stirred. Like a snake uncoiling itself, ready to strike. My blood rushed and I felt a painful sensation in my chest. Like something was being stabbed, and then cut into pieces and ripped out of my body. I realized it was my heart. My heart physically hurt. If this is what you want. He nodded once. I will make you a promise. Edward Said turning his face upwards to the cloudy sky. I promise that this will be the last time you'll see me. I won't come back. I won't put you through anything like this again. You can go on with your life without any more interference from me. It will be as if I never existed. I didn't know if this statement required a response. I felt like if I opened my mouth I would break out in sobs and I wouldn't cry in front of Edward. I wouldn't be begging and crying the last time he ever saw me. He smiled gently. Don't worry. You're human, your memory is no more than a sieve. Time heals all wounds for your kind. Quote. And your memories? I asked. It sounded like there was something stuck in my throat, like I was choking. Well, he hesitated for a short second. I won't forget. But my kind were very easily distracted. He smiled. The smile was tranquil and it did not touch his eyes. He took a step away from me. That's everything, I suppose. We won't bother you again. The plural caught my attention. That surprised me. Alice isn't coming back, I realized out loud. My chest felt a little heavier. As though the grief of my best friend leaving me was weighing me down. He shook his head slowly, watching my face. No, they're all gone. I stayed behind to tell you goodbye. Alice is gone. My voice was blank with disbelief. She wanted to say goodbye, but I convinced her that a clean break would be better for you. I was dizzy, it was hard to concentrate. His words swirled around in my head, and I heard the doctor at the hospital in Phoenix, last spring, as he showed me the X-rays. You can see it's a clean break, his finger traced along the picture of my severed bone. That's good. It will heal more easily, more quickly. I tried to breathe normally. I needed to concentrate. Goodbye, Bella, he said in the same quiet, peaceful voice. Wait, I choked out the word. He couldn't be leaving me like this. Just leaving me here all alone. Take care of yourself, he breathed. He leaned down, and pressed his lips very lightly to my forehead for the briefest instant. My eyes closed. There was a light unnatural breeze. My eyes flashed open. The leaves on a small vine maple shuddered with the gentle wind of his passage. He was gone. My heart was in more pain than ever. My breath was shallow and uneven and my chest was burning. Tears spilled over and racked sobs started. I sat down on the earth and put my head in my hands. Breakups suck. Vampire breakups suck even more. There was a clap of thunder and it started raining. I rubbed my eyes. No reason to sit here forever. He's not coming back. I stood up and before I could take a step anywhere I realized I had absolutely no idea where I was. Edward had left me alone in the middle of the forest. His name made my chest hurt. It was cloudy and dark now, not to mention extremely wet. I couldn't remember which way was nearest to the house, so I started walking in the direction which had the least amount of trees. After a few minutes of walking I fell down and scraped my knee. Blood gushed out and I tried to stand up, but it hurt too much and I fell back down. "All right, Bella. Don't panic, you're almost home," I tried telling myself. With more force I pushed myself back up and started limping home. It hurt severely whenever I put any pressure on my legs, so I took frequent breaks. Just when I thought the rain was letting up, there was a sharp flash of lightning and I screamed and jumped back. My leg wouldn't support me and I fell backwards, hitting my head on something hard. The last thing I was of was the fact I smelled blood before I lost consciousness. "Bella, Bella, are you okay? Is she alive?" "Yeah, there's a pulse but there's blood all over her." I dimly heard voices through a haze in my head. My eyes were closed and the back of my head had a dull throbbing pain. "Bella, wake up," I heard the voice again. Slightly louder this time. "Maybe we should just carry her back," the second voice asked. "I don't want to move her. I'm afraid of hurting her head. She needs a doctor, Sam." The voices were too loud to ignore now. Slowly I opened my eyes. Two dark-skinned men stood next to me. They were very tall and had short hair. They hadn't noticed I was awake yet. They were arguing in another language I didn't recognize. I started to sit up, then the world started spinning and I let out a faint groan and put my head in my hands. "Bella," one of the men said, immediately bending over me and lifting my head up with his hands. "Are you okay?" the other one asked. "Fine, just a little dizzy," I mumbled, reaching my hand to the back of my head. When I pulled it back it was covered in blood. "Ew," I said aloud. "Yeah, ew. UCK, Sam, blood makes my stomach hurt," the other boy complained. "Suck it up, Jared," Sam said and turned back to me. "Bella, how did this happen to you? Have you been hurt?" "Yeah," I said, wondering why he would be asking this. "I'm bleeding in the middle of the forest." "Who hurt you?" Sam asked again. He was speaking very slowly as though I wouldn't be able to understand him if he talked fast. "Who hurt me?" "I did." Jared raised his eyebrows. "You hurt yourself." I rolled my eyes. "It was an accident. I fell and scraped my knee and then a flash of lightning scared me and I fell back and hit my head. I looked behind me and saw a rock smeared with blood." "On a rock? Smooth." Jared smirked. "Shut up, Jared," Sam said. "How did you find me?" I asked, suddenly wondering why two men were wandering around the forest at night. "And how they knew my name." "After you didn't come back home, Charlie sent out a search party," Jared said. "Cullen called and mentioned you were going out for a walk." His face all of a sudden darkened. As though the thought of the Cullens made him mad. It certainly made me mad. He left me out alone in the middle of the forest and then called Charlie and lied to him. "What do you mean when I didn't come home? What time is it?" I asked, looking around. The forest was pitch black and there were no sounds except for us. Jared was holding a flashlight and looking around me as though looking for clues. "It's almost 4 a.m., Sam told me. 4 a.m., I gasped. I had left with Edward right after school. "Yes, Charlie will be worried, we should get you home." "Yes, we should." I nodded. I stood up, except there was a blinding pain in my knee and I gasped and fell back down. "My knee," I moaned. Sam bent over me and poked my knee. "Ouch," I complained. "I don't think it's broken, just a sprain." "Great," I said sarcastically. "I'll have to carry you," he said matter-of-factly. Before I could argue, he scooped me up in his arms and him and Jared started walking. I had no idea how they could see anything in this lie. But they seemed to know exactly where they were going. I kept the entire time. I was too tired to say anything and my head hurt. I must have hit it pretty hard. Sam and Jared stayed quite the whole time as well, and after a while I heard a lot of voices and saw lights through the trees. We broke out of the trees and I saw that we were in my backyard. There were a lot of people in little groups with lamps, and Charlie stood in the middle of it. "Charlie, we've got her," Sam called loudly. Charlie spun around and when he saw me he panicked and ran towards me. "Bella, honey, are you all right?" Charlie asked, gently touching my face. "Why is she covered in blood?" he demanded. "She fell down and might have sprained her knee and she hit her head on a rock and passed out." "Bella, what were you doing out there?" Charlie asked. "I can't remember," I lied. I didn't want Charlie to know. Let's get her inside, someone suggested. Charlie nodded and Sam carried me into the house. He gently laid me down on the couch. Bella, a new voice asked. I looked at the gray-haired man leaning over me. Dr. Guarantee, I mumbled. That's right, dear, he said. Sam says you're hurt. My knee and my head. He murmured. He sat me up and pulled out supplies from his briefcase and started working on the back of my head. You hit your head pretty hard. I'm stitching it up right now and then I'll look at your knee. Okay, I mumbled. Doctor Guarantee had injected me with some numbing medicine so I couldn't feel what he was doing. Bella, sweetie, are you sure you don't remember anything? Charlie asked, sitting down next to me. He had dark shadows under his eyes and he was still in his sheriff uniform. No, not really. What do you remember? Dr. Guarantee. I remember coming home from school and then nothing else. I told them. I decided that was the safest place to leave off. What I wouldn't give to not remember him telling me that I wasn't good enough for him. Amnesia is fairly common with head injuries. You may get your memories back over the next few days. Already got them, I thought. Dr. Guarantee told me that I might have a concussion and that Charlie should wake me up every 45 minutes. He told me to sleep on the couch tonight and to exercise my knee carefully tomorrow. Charlie walked him and a few other people out the door, including Sam and Jared. I sat up waiting for Charlie. I knew he would want to talk about this. Soon enough he walked back into the room looking more tired than ever. He sat down on the couch next to me and pulled me in close for a hug. I leaned my bandaged head against his chest. Bella, sweetie, I'm sorry this had to happen to you. It's okay. I mumbled. I talked to Edward. I called him after I couldn't find you. He said you two broke up. I shuddered and started crying. It hurt so badly. My chest was in excruciating pain and hot tears streamed down my face. My face burned with embarrassment and my breath was short and there didn't seem to be enough air in the room. Shish, Bella. I know. It'll get better. I promise. It'll get better. Shish, Bella. I know. It'll get better. I promise. It'll get better. Charlie had told me that night. It didn't get better. It got worse. It got a lot worse. I stayed home from school the days afterward. My head healed fast and the sprain only lasted for a few days. But there was the heartbreak to deal with. I had never had a boyfriend before. Most girls dealt with this stuff when they were 13. They dated a boy for 2 weeks and after they broke up would eat a carton of ice cream and watch sappy movies. I was 16, and I had dated a 107-year-old boy for half a year. And we had been through so much together, much more than any normal couple. Nothing made me feel better. I felt as if someone had died. I moved through the motions of doing things not really understanding. I tried to get over him. I didn't want to be hung up on him my entire life. But I couldn't. There was something tying me to him, forbidding me to lead my own life. And then there was the sickness. I didn't notice anything at first. I was making dinner one night and when I put the potatoes in the pot and waited for the water to boil, I got an agonizing pain in my head. I fell to the floor clutching my head. I shut my eyes tight and shuddered. It felt like a great black cloud had come over me and created a storm of pain. I threw my head back and screamed. It felt like an eternity and then abruptly stopped. When I shakily stood up, the water hadn't even begun to warm yet. It wasn't just that one time. They kept coming. Out of nowhere they come and put my under tormenting pain and then they would disappear leaving nothing but a faint squeezing pain around my brain to let me know they existed at all. It wasn't just headaches either. I was having pains in my stomach and my chest. It felt like someone had taken a dull blade and cut a hole in my chest and yanked it out. It made breathing demanding and a lot of effort. I started having asthma attacks. I'd never had so much as a couch allergy in my life. Little things started setting me off. Perfume a girl wore from 5 lockers down started a fit. Charlie bought me an inhaler. Those things saved lives. I lost weight. I was never a plump person. I was always a healthy weight but now my ribs showed clearly. Jessica and Lauren had started a rumor that I was anorexic when I was changing for gym class. It was true I guess. I never ate. Food repulsed me. The smell of it was enough to send me rushing into the bathroom to puke. My life was becoming a chore. And then there was James. Edward had taken me to play baseball with his family. During the middle of the game, Alice got a vision of 3 vampires coming, and they posed a threat to me since I was a human. The leader of the coven was named James. I guess you could say he took a liking to me. Or rather the fact that I had a bodyguard of 7 vampires. He took the situation as a game, and I was the target. He started a hunt. Edward took me back to the house and put me in a car with Alice and Jasper. We tried to throw him off our trail by leading him up north to Canada while I was in Phoenix. He followed the rest of the Cullens halfway before realizing his mistake and then came to Phoenix. I received a call from James. He had fooled me, and I rushed to meet him at my old dance studio thinking he had my mother. When I arrived I was first met with relief that he didn't have my mother. I could have died happy. That's when the fight started. James could have just killed me. But he had to do it his way. He taunted me. He was still going after Edward and his family. The fact that they would be hurt ate away at me. He then pushed me down on the floor and stepped on my leg, breaking it in half. He threw me into a mirror, and my skin cut and left scrapes. He lifted me up and threw me onto the floor, breaking my ribs. And then he bit me. I've been bitten by a dog before. Teeth are sharper than you realize. A normal human has the power to bite off their own tongue. Vampire teeth are sharper. It felt like knives were shoved just above my wrist. Blood spurted out and an overwhelming sense of pain came over me. Then his venom coursed through my veins. Flames were burning every inch of me, making me incoherent. Just when I thought I couldn't stand it anymore, Edward, Carlisle, Jasper, Emmett, and Alice burst into the room. Alice and Carlisle started working on my other injuries and Edward put his mouth on the bite and sucked the venom out. Emmett and Jasper ripped apart James and burned him. They killed him. He was gone. So why was I seeing him? I was panting on the couch after having an asthma attack. The TV was on playing some show I didn't know with a bunch of shirtless guys when a cold, evil, amused voice asked from the corner. Having an asthma attack, or are all those boys getting to you? I screamed and spun around. James was sitting on the lazy boy Charlie occupied every night. He was wearing a gray shirt and blue jeans. Aside from the clothes he looked exactly the same as when I last saw him. Long blonde hair in a braid, cold pale skin, and red eyes. He smiled broadly at me as though I was a long-lost friend that he hadn't seen in a long time. I continued to scream and backed up on the couch, as though I would be safer if I was a few inches farther. "Oh, please stop that, Bella," James said, scrunching up his face as though he swallowed something sour. "You have no idea how long I've been trapped. I don't want to hear you scream." "Funny," I spat out. "That was the only thing you wanted from me in Phoenix. That and killing me." James made a tisk noise. Now, Bella. Still hung up on that. Can't we forgive and forget?" I jumped off of the couch and backed into the wall. "How are you here? You died. I saw. You were torn apart and burned. You don't come back from something like that." James made another face. "Yes, your friends made sure I wouldn't be able to reform. That body is gone, never to return," he said bitterly. "Then how are you here?" I asked. I started gasping and my hand tightened on my inhaler. "I'm part of you, Bella," James told me in a voice that one would connect with a college lecture. "What do you mean you're part of me?" I asked, disgusted, as he stood up and started pacing around the room, although keeping his distance from me. "My venom was poured inside you, Bella. Even though Edwin was his name." "No, Edward. Edward sucked it out of you so that you wouldn't become a vampire. There are still traces of it inside your brain. You see, Bella, I'm not truly here. I'm part of your mind." I took a moment to register this. "So you're not really here. You're just my imagination." James smiled. "Not exactly. If I was just your imagination, you could just close your eyes and wish me away like a fairy tale." "Go ahead, try," he said, his eagerness making me sick to my stomach. I would do anything to get rid of him. So I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes, imagining James wasn't there with all my heart. I carefully opened my eyes. He was gone. I smiled and let out a breath. "Yes, your living room is very nice, isn't it?" a voice said in my ear. I screamed and slid down the wall and looked to my left where James was. He didn't leave, he was just hiding. "Bella, I've been stuck in your head for months. I just got out after weeks of wrecking your body to weaken your mind, so I could appear. It wasn't easy. Being stuck in the back our head, listening to your adolescent drama. Math test this, English test that, rumors around school, blah. Blah, blah. Really, Bella, hell can't be worse than being stuck in your mind. You were killed months ago. Why are you here now? I whispered, clutching my head in my hands, seconds away from crying. Well, Bella, you were affected by the vampire bite. You didn't notice that you were becoming more vampire-like, not quite a full vampire, more like a half-vampire, half-human hybrid. The vampire part of you was feeding off Edward, and the rest of the Cullens, while the human part of you was genuinely in love with him. Your vampire side was feeding off him like a parasite. When he left, you were suddenly cut off from his aura, ripped from your drug. I'm going through withdrawal, I asked, sitting back against the wall. James was still right next to me. Yes, you could call it that, he said in a happy voice, as though I was a student who answered a difficult question. Will it stop? I whispered, scared. I caught a glimpse of myself and James in the mirror. My hair was down and had a greasy, unflattering shine. I had dark shadows underneath my eyes and my skin had a sickly, yellow tinge. No, I'll be with you forever. And if I die, you are dying. Your system isn't used to this. It's destroying you. I'm surprised you've hung on this long. Your mind is strong if everything else is weak. However, I wouldn't give you more than a few weeks. And when we die, you die, Bella. I won't. You see, I need a new body. I nodded slowly, swallowing. You want my body? James let out a loud laugh. Of course not, Bella. Look at you. Who would want your body? You're my unfortunate host. I'm only a thing of the mind right now. I need a good body. Soon enough, I'll be able to break through your mind completely. I'll find a new body and pour myself into him. I'll be a vampire again. I'll find Victoria and I'll be able to be myself again. You'll be dead by then. You're insane. I'm not going to let that happen. If I have to keep you a prisoner in my head forever, then I will. I yelled, jumping and backing away from him. He had a smirk on his face and he stood up and slowly walked up to me. He put both his hands on my cheeks. His hands didn't feel like they were in my head. They felt so real. I shuddered with disgust. You can't stop me. Look at yourself. You can't even take care of yourself. He whispered. He leaned his face closer to mine and put his lips on my cheek for a soft kiss. It's pathetic. Bella. Charlie's voice called through the house. James smirked and took a few steps back from me, and then suddenly, he wasn't there at all. Bella. Charlie asked again as he walked into the living room to find me standing in the middle of the room looking like I'd seen a ghost. Yeah, Dad, I whispered, probably freaking him out even more. My voice was hoarse. Are you feeling okay? Charlie asked, leaning against the door and crossing his arms. I'm fine. Just thought I saw something, I told him, before giving him a fake smile and heading upstairs to my room. James was right. I couldn't take care of myself. It was 2 days after James had first showed up. I had spent the last 2 days wondering what I was going to do. I was dying. There wasn't much I knew about that. After thinking of dumb ideas for 42 hours, I broke down, Googled how to stop it. The top results were a bunch of anti-depression websites. James was still hanging around. But after 42 hours of him popping in or out, it became less of a fear and more of an annoyance. There wasn't much to my life anymore. I didn't see much point to even getting out of bed anymore, but I needed to get rid of James. I couldn't let him back into the world and let him track other game. Humans really are boring, James said in a dull voice. He was sitting on my desk in my bedroom studying his fingernails. Shut up. I'm trying to kill you. James laughed. Like I said, Bella, I can't die. You have before, I said through gritted teeth. Being burned alive does that to you. You should try setting yourself on fire. That might work, I said slowly. James looked surprised. You're not serious, are you? It's an idea. You're a strange human. So, I've been told, I said grumpily, jumping up and rummaging through my bedside table drawer. After pushing through the old contents of the drawer, I found what I was looking for. An old razor that I had broken when I dropped a stereo on it. I broke 2 things that day. The razor was dull. This would hurt. I shifted my weight from foot to foot, steeling myself. With a deep breath, I pushed the blade into my wrist. Crap, this hurt, I mentally thought. I took another breath. I've been through worse than this. Carefully, I pushed in deeper into my skin. The skin broke and blood started gushing out. The sight of blood made me shudder. Delicious looking, James said, almost sadly. Shut up, I said through my teeth. What exactly are you doing? James asked, as I carefully traced the blade around my left hand, around the scar James had left. That started this whole mess. Cutting you out, I whispered, in a low moan. It was freaking hurting. The blood was really spouting now, and I was just retracing around the scar. I tried digging into the actual bite mark, but it just bent the blade. I tried applying more pressure and the blade pressed into my fingers. Blood was now dripping onto the carpet, leaving a stain I'm sure I wouldn't be able to get out. The blade bent even more, pushing into my fingers, and made no effect to the scar, and I threw the blade across the floor, gasping. I fell onto my bed and started to cry. You think a dull blade would manage to even dent the strongest granite in the world? James asked smugly. I have him a look of absolute hatred, before turning on my heel and heading to the bathroom. When I arrived, James was leaning against the sink. I told him to shut his eyes, which he did by covering them like a 2-year-old playing hide and seek, and then I stripped and jumped into the shower. The blood looked even worse running down my bare legs, and splattering against the walls. I had to take deep breaths not to pass out. It looked like a horror movie. After I finished, head scrubbing all traces of blood from my body, I got out of the shower and patched up my wound. It made me frustrated to go through all that pain and not even have a scratch on the damn scar. Well, it was a good effort, James said with mock sympathy, his hands still covering his eyes. That was attempt number 1. I told him firmly. The pain in my arm lasted for days afterwards. It made my arm stiff and hard to move. And it had all been for nothing. James was still here, and it was driving me into a corner. I would spend Spanish class trembling while James whispered in my ear. I had to swerve, to avoid hitting another car when James unexpectedly popped into the car and got in my line of vision. Before I was just in a dull haze, with occasional blaring pain. But now with the constant paranoia, jumpiness and crazy actions, I was really starting to worry that I was actually going crazy. I needed to think of different ways to get rid of James. Physical harm wouldn't do it. I needed something else. My car had decided to not work today, so I was walking home from school. For the moment I was free of James, which suited me just fine. It was nice to be free of him for the moment, although it was annoying not knowing when he was going to come back. My thoughts were interrupted by a loud shout of laughter coming from some guys hanging by the side of the road. They were passing around a bottle of vodka. Perfect. A nice way to take the edge off. I headed over to them quickly. They stopped and sized me up. "Whatcha you want?" a tall boy with blonde hair asked. He was a senior at Forks High. Tim, or Tom I think was his name. "A drink," I told them truthfully. "Cool, a chick," an unfamiliar guy said. He was the tallest of the group and had dark brown skin. I think he was from the Indian reservation close to here. "We could have some fun with her," he suggested slyly. "Shut up, Paul, she's Chief Swan's daughter." A boy in my grade with ginger hair hissed at him. "She could be a narc." "Relax, I just need to take a shot or two," I told him, rolling my eyes. "A lightweight like you." I could see it, the boy named Paul said with a smirk. "I say we let her." Tim or Tom said. "I second that," Paul put in. 2 against 1. Bad luck. "Fine," the ginger one said and handed me the bottle. I took a swig and coughed while the guys laughed. I'd never had strong alcohol before. I'd had champagne twice before at a wedding. And Renee's friend Allie gave me some kind of fruity cocktail before that left me with a headache. "Careful there," Paul said, grabbing the bottle. "Don't want to overdo it too quickly. It'll ruin the fun." "Yeah, because this is a blast. After a few more drinks it will be," the ginger guy promised me. When the bottle got to me a second time, I took a smaller sip. The alcohol burned my throat, but I didn't care. By the third time I was learning how much to take in, and by the fourth time I was a pro. The fifth and sixth I executed perfectly, and the seventh I was a little sloppy. The eighth I managed to hold onto, and the ninth I almost lost my grip on the bottle and I let out a small scream of laughter. God, it felt good to laugh. "Whoa there, careful," Paul said as I stumbled. "Yeah, don't want to take a header into the gutter," Tom said. We all laughed. God, Tom was hilarious. "Next time we should light up a joint at the same time," Gingy suggested. That's what I called him. "Awesome," I said a little too loud. "Let's do it now." I jumped to show my excitement and stumbled to the side. Paul caught me and steadied me. "I think you might be done." He laughed. "What? No, I'm fine." I told him, trying to get out of his grip, but I almost fell and threw my arms around his neck, facing him. You have pretty eyes. That's not all that's pretty. He told me with a smirk. Hey, lay off man, she's wasted. Gingy told him. Aw, shut it. She's fine. Careful dude. Dangerous waters. Huh, wonder what it would be like if water were all vodka. Tom said with a lopsided grin. That'd be awesome, I told him fervently. I broke out of Paul's grip and stretched my arms out wide, and the wind brushed me forward. Oh my god. Guys, I'm flying, I screamed. Okay, I'll take her home. Paul told everyone. I felt his arms wrap around me and he dragged me home. Oh, Paul, I'm fine, I told him as I patted his lower back. Little low, Bella, Paul said, amused. Oh, whoops, I said, laughing loudly. I'm sorry for touching your butt, Paul. Bella, your neighbors are right there, he hissed in my ear. His voice was low. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, Mrs. Frankson. I didn't mean to touch Paul's butt, you see. I yelled to my neighbor who was painting her fence. She gave us disapproving looks and gave huff and straightened her flowered hat. Oh God, Paul said as he laughed into my shoulder. Hey, Paul, we're at my house, I said excitedly. I live here. God, you're awesome when you're drunk. Am I drunk? I asked. I felt light-hearted and free. If this was drunk, then I liked it. Yes, yes you are, Paul told me as he led me to my door. Keys. They're in my pocket, I told him. Paul raised his eyebrows and grinned. Well, then I'm going to have to get them. Paul pulled me forward and put his hand in my back pocket. Warm tingles spread through my body. I felt a flutter in my stomach and my heart started to pound. There we are, Paul said, pulling the keys out. He jammed it in the door and pulled me into the house. So, this is the chief's house, Paul said, leading me to the living room. You know my dad? I asked, changing directions to the stairs. We've had the pleasure of a few run-ins. My room is upstairs, I told. I might need help with these stairs. Help me up. His grin got bigger. Sure. I led him straight to my room and plopped onto my bed, still laughing. Paul sat down next to me and brushed my hair to the side. Your eyes are a pretty color. Like caramel, I told him slowly. My words were becoming low and slurred. Yeah, he breathed. He leaned into my neck and gave a light kiss on my neck. I stiffened. You okay? He asked, brushing my hair back. I didn't say anything. I was stunned. My brain wasn't moving as fast as it usually did. I wanted to talk to him, but my mouth was too heavy. Paul pulled back and gave me another kiss, this time an inch from my lips. My body still didn't move. My brain was still shut off. Fine, Paul breathed and he pulled away. If you ever feel up to it though, I'm just a call away. He gave me one more smirk and left the room. I started to breathe again, but no thoughts came my way. A knot formed in my stomach and I laid down and turned onto my side and closed my eyes. When I woke up, it was dark out. I sat up thinking I'd go get a glass of water and my stomach lurched forward. I ran to the bathroom as fast as I could, and the moment I dropped beside the toilet I vomited into the bowl. The sick burned my throat and my head spun. Hungover? James asked, looking at me with disgust. Keep your voice down, I moaned, laying my head against the cold rim of the toilet. Oh God, humans are disgusting, James complained. Yeah, because killing people is pristine. At least we don't regurgitate it back up. Alcohol is a poison. Why would you willingly do that to yourself? Maybe because there's a jackass in my head, I complained, and gave another heave. Watching you like this is pathetic. At least I can be like this. You don't have a body. Keep doing this and I will. I felt much stronger while you were running around with those boys today. I froze. What do you mean? You weren't even there. Yes, I was. You were just too drunk to notice. You were there, I said slowly, leaning my head back against the toilet. Yes, I blocked you. You didn't block me. The alcohol prevented you from seeing me. However, with you so weak I almost escaped. That one boy would have made a great host. I was planning to take his body, but your emotions got in the way. James spat bitterly. My emotions. My heart started to pound. I couldn't believe that James had almost escaped. Yes, you really liked him. I was working on taking you out so I could transfer host bodies, when love came strongly from you. And prevented me. I stiffened. I don't love Paul. Strongly attracted then. I'm not strongly attracted to Paul. If you weren't, then I would have been able to kill you and take him. I started to think. It hurt a lot. I had a major hangover. I had experienced feelings for someone other than Edward. The concept was new to me. If you almost took over me when I was drunk, then why are you telling me this? I asked. James was quiet for a moment. I don't we want to experience love for a teenage boy ever again. I laughed before puking again. Ice. Ice is freaking cold. Really, Bella? This is your plan? James asked, looking amused. Shut up. It was a plan. Plans were good. When I was driving home from school the minute I saw the grocery store I came up with an insane plan. I swerved into the parking lot and rushed inside and bought 3 large bags of ice. The cashier raised her eyebrows but didn't say anything. It wasn't every day in Forks that you saw an anorexic girl who looked like a drug junkie buying up all the ice in the store. When I got home I quickly turned off the heater. Outside it was already freezing and it didn't take long for the house to drop from 70°F to 16°F. Running upstairs I filled the bathtub with all of the ice. The marble tub made it colder. I stripped into my underwear, and was steeling myself to get into the tub. You know it'd probably be colder if you were naked. James suggested, leaning against the sink. I said shut up. Like I've been telling you, Bella. You can't control me. Then leave. I told him. I will. Soon. In your dreams. I'm getting rid of you. James snorted. You think taking an ice bath will get rid of me? The cold will just feed the vampire side of you, making me stronger. No. It'll make me stronger. I corrected him. Right before taking the plunge into the tub. Ice burns. Ice burned into my skin, making me gasp. Pins and needle sensations flooded my body. Something started happening within my body. A writhing snake started to twist and bend through my body, lunging for an escape. My body started shaking and the pain was almost unbearable. My mind started to freeze. Yes, that's what I had been aiming for. My mind was rapidly fading from consciousness. It felt like I was on a speeding train. I was killing my mind. Bella. What the hell? I was suddenly thrown back into consciousness. Charlie was standing in the doorway looking furious and James was slunk back against the sink. I hadn't managed to get rid of him but he was faded. He looked like a picture that had been water damaged. If only I had bathed a few more minutes. Bella. Charlie's voice boomed again. I jumped this time. Charlie ran towards the tub and plummeted his arms and he pulled me out. Even though it probably wasn't that much warmer in the house after soaking in the ice water, I was met with sudden warmth. Bella, what were you thinking? Charlie yelled again. N. I tried to tell him nothing. But my teeth were chattering so bad that I couldn't make out a word. Bella, do you realize you could have gotten hypothermia and died? Charlie asked, taking off his sheriff's jacket and wrapping it around my shoulders and pushing me towards my room. He threw open the door and James was sitting on my desk. He didn't look confident anymore. He still had the half-vanished look and he looked worn out. The sight of him looked so frail gave me a feeling of success and I resisted the urge to stick my tongue out at him. Half because Charlie would have another reason to institutionalize me and half because I would probably bite my tongue off. Stay there, Bella. I'm going to turn the heat back on. Charlie wrapped my large comforter around me and then headed back downstairs. That was enlightening. James whispered, hoarse. www.AAAASSSSIIITT. I stuttered, pulling the heavy blanket tighter around me. The numbness of the ice bath was wearing off, and sharp, tight pain was replacing it. We almost died, Bella. You obviously haven't experienced death, and we were close. A few minutes longer, we would have been gone. WWWEE. I asked. I had meant to shut down my mind. I wanted to trap him. And when my mind reawakened I figured I could find a way to keep him there. Yes, James said, his voice laden with disgust. I was wrong. You were slipping from your mind. That experience was traumatic enough for you that I'm still only half here. If I want to find another host body then you need to be painfully awake for it. IIIW won't TT that THA PP pen. I told him, as sternly as I could muster. James looked at me. I'll find a way. I'll be able to overpower you. Look ATTYU. You're barely alive. Living off me. I can make you go away with just ice. James looked murderous. You tried. You failed. Only because of Charlie. I told him fiercely. He smirked. And why is Charlie even here? Why is he home so early? That confused me. I don't know what you're talking about. Quote, you called Charlie. Right before you filled the tub. You told him you were planning something crazy and to come home and stop you. I didn't do that, I said. I had no memory of the event. He smiled. Oh, but you did. On your way upstairs. Can you remember walking up the stairs or coming into the house? I tried to remember but I couldn't remember anything. It was like a blank slate. Nothing. You overpowered me, I whispered, taking in a gasp. I couldn't hold it. I held on with every ounce of strength I had, but your mind is too strong. He spat. Doesn't matter how strong it is. You were still able to control it. James had a thoughtful expression on his face. It was too hard to block you. But I wonder if you saw everything. If I only took over your nervous system. What are you talking about? I asked, fear flooding me, colder than the ice. All of a sudden James disappeared. My body lost feeling. I was no longer in the front seat. I was unceremoniously thrust into the back. I couldn't feel my muscles. I panicked and tried to move my arm. It didn't move. I could see everything through my own eyes, yet I had no control. Without any feeling on my part, my body stood up. I was wearing my green robe now, so I wasn't in my underpants. My body left my bedroom and started down the long stairs. Closer to Charlie, I thought with a panic. James, I screamed out in my head. There was no answer. James was right. Being trapped inside my head was horrible. I had a floaty feeling of drifting. It wasn't like I was moving around, but whenever hot of just staying put, everything seemed to travel fast. I couldn't speak, and I could barely hold thoughts in my head. I could think about food, but if I focused on pizza I lost my train of thought. The worst part is seeing things and not being able to do anything about it. It felt exactly like I was in a movie theater, first row, and telling the main character that she was making the wrong decisions. My body moved towards the kitchen. My hearing was a low buzz. I couldn't focus on a voice until James did. James heard Charlie talking to someone on the phone in the living room, so vaguely I registered that fact. My body started rummaging through the drawers, my hands fumbling with forks and seasonings and serving dishes. Then they abruptly stopped when they touched a long, sharp steak knife. Charlie! My bodiless mind screamed. My body wavered as if my anxiety had almost overthrown it. But my body continued under James' control. My hands gripped the knife and started towards the living room. I could hear Charlie talking on the phone. He was seated on the other side of the room and didn't notice me come in. She's not well, drive. Guarantee. She tried to drown herself in ice. She's not been eating. I realize you're not a therapist. Well, there must be something you can. No, I'm not going to do that. I'd rather. She won't even leave the house. I've talked to Renee. She's never acted like this before. It's like she. Yeah, well, up yours. Charlie yelled, slamming the phone onto the receiver. He was red in the face, his eyes were watering, and he was breathing heavily. He spun around and stiffened. Bella, what are you doing? Charlie whispered in an extremely quiet voice, looking at me with horror. Run! I mentally screamed, but nothing came out of my mouth. My body advanced slowly to Charlie. Bella, sweetie. Calm down, drop the knife. Charlie whispered. My mind launched everywhere, desperate to find a way to use my body. It's my body, I thought with all my might. My body took another step. No, oh God. James, please no. I mentally cried. My body wavered, but it kept advancing. Charlie didn't back up. He stayed exactly where he was. He didn't seem to be looking at the knife. He was staring at my face. Stop! I shrieked out in my head. My body started to tremble, but I couldn't move it. My hands lowered and brought the knife next to my stomach, still pointing at Charlie. Getting my body back wasn't working. I focused solely on my hands. They started to tremble. Turn the blade around, I thought gravely. The knife slowly moved towards my stomach. Charlie's eyes grew wide. No, Bella. No, stop. Charlie commanded in a low, hurried voice. I'm sorry. I silently wept. I couldn't let James kill Charlie. Even if it meant my own life. The knife was barely an inch from my stomach. When all of a sudden I was thrown back into my body. I gasped loudly and dropped the knife on the floor. I fell backwards and started crying loudly. I expected Charlie to run and leave. But instead he ran towards me and pulled me into him. Bella. He breathed into my hair. Daddy. I wept, clutching close onto him. I hadn't called him daddy in years. Bella, what's wrong? He asked firmly. It was a simple question with a complicated answer. I can't tell you. Damn it, Bella. Charlie yelled loudly. He detached himself from me, picked me up and pushed me onto the couch. Bella, you've been keeping secrets from me since you moved here. And I've had it. He screamed almost hysterically. Dad, I started. No. Bella, I'm doing the talking. He paused and took a calming voice and started talking in a stern low voice. Bella, when you first moved here you were normal. You were shy, sure, but then you started hanging out with those Cullens. I thought it would be good for you. Hanging out with people your age, but then you started keeping secrets. Don't say you didn't, Charlie said as I attempted to interrupt. I know you did, going to Port Angeles with Jessica and coming back with Edward. Lying about where you were, and running away. Bella, I still don't understand what happened. You were fine and happy and then you came back and threw a fit and screamed at me and drove all the way to Phoenix. And I don't believe you were alone. I know those Cullen kids had something to do with it. And Bella, you fell out of a window, broke your leg, fractured your wrist, hit your head and cut yourself deeply. On the same day your dance studio mysteriously burns down. My jaw dropped. I couldn't believe Charlie had figured it out. I'm not an idiot, Bella. Charlie growled. Why? Oh, you were checked into the hospital an hour before the police found the wreckage of your fall. At the time I was so relieved that you were okay, that I didn't ask. But Bella, I'm asking you now. What happened that day? I shivered. I desperately wanted to tell Charlie everything but I couldn't. I couldn't put him in any more danger than he was already in. I kept quiet. Charlie gave me a disappointed look and continued on. You came back even though you left. You got back together with Edward after breaking up with him, and acted like everything was normal and perfect. Then they left. He paused and gauged my reaction. I was extremely still. Bella, it's not normal. I haven't seen anything like this. When your mom left me it wasn't pleasant. I had my tough times too, but not like this. He looked at me. The constant sickness. Not eating. Bella, I saw you today, you're too skinny. You're like a skeleton. Your nightmares. Every night you wake up screaming, Bella. You don't talk, you don't laugh, you don't do anything. Bella, I see how much pain you're in. It kills me. Charlie's voice was strained and he sat down next me. Dad, I'm sorry. I started reaching out to him. He took my hand in his and patted it. I don't want sorry bells, I want you to get better. I'm trying. No, you're not. Especially lately. Charlie reached into his police bag and pulled out a plastic Ziploc bag. Inside was a bloody dull razor. Oh, I said, suddenly realizing. No, Dad, I wasn't. Just like you weren't drinking vodka the other day. Charlie asked grimly. Dad, I started. Bella, I've tried. I've done everything I can think of. I'm at my wit's end. I'm afraid something bad is going to happen to you. Something worse than the cutting, drinking, the ice, and the knife. Charlie's voice cracked. He took a breath. I can't risk my bad judgment anymore. Maybe if I had talked to you sooner, tried harder. Don't blame yourself, Dad. I cried, clutching his arm. I have too. If I had taken better care of you. Renee never had this trouble. Are you sending me back to Renee? I asked, my tears making my face itch. Charlie fidgeted. Renee doesn't know what to do either. There was something in the way he said it, and the way he looked. I had seen it before. She doesn't want me, does she? I asked, stunned. The answer came quick and it made horrible sense. Charlie gave a look of pity. It was the same look I got when I'd be at my babysitter's hours after Renee was supposed to pick me up. The same look I got spending weeks at a time with my grandma because Renee was spending time with her boyfriend. Renee had never really been there for me. Bella, I think it would be best if you went to stay with your cousin Scott and Aunt Melissa. Charlie said. I was losing him too. You're sending me to California. I yelled. For now. I think Melissa would really be able to help, Bella. No. I couldn't risk putting more people in danger. Bella, please. We just want you to get better. Charlie, I can't, I started. Well, you're going. And that's final. Charlie said firmly. Dad, please don't send me away. I cried. I'm sorry, Bella. But I'm of ideas. I need you to do this. My lips trembled as I looked over Charlie. His face was pale and tired and his eyes, oh his eyes. They were wet with tears and fear and hopelessness shined. I couldn't stand to hurt Charlie anymore. I ran up the stairs and collapsed onto my bed sobbing. And hating myself for hurting my father. Well, it seems we're going on a trip. James said delightedly. He was sitting in my rocking chair in the corner smiling pleasantly. You, I whispered vehemently. Me, you almost killed Charlie. I spat. I didn't want to. Bella. Can you imagine me having his body? Blah. But he wouldn't have been able to hurt me the way you would have. I needed to try. Bella. I gave up in the end though. I overpowered you. You used your hands. Bella. I don't think that qualifies for a medal. Once you thought killing yourself. Bella, I had to give up. You're never giving up, are you? Never. James disappeared before I could say anything else. I fell against my bed and started sobbing again. I only had a day to pack. As I put all of my belongings, I realized how little I actually held dear. None of my clothes were anything spectacular. The nicest ones I only wore around the Cullens. It was too painful to wear then. Now all my clothes fit into one large suitcase. Renee never liked to buy me books. What was the point of spending so much money on something you're only going to use once? She'd ask. I safely put away my worn copies of Wuthering Heights, Romeo and Juliet, and Jane Eyre. The binding of Wuthering Heights had been ripped in half, and fixed with Scotch tape. The cover of Romeo and Juliet had some kind of stain on the cover from the previous owner. These were my favorites. I had brought only a few belongings to Forks. My Midsummer Night's Dream snow globe, I carefully wrapped and put away safely. I had a few posters of Led Zeppelin when I went through my rock phase in 7th grade. Those stayed rolled up in my closet since I arrived. I'd leave them here. I only paused when I found a scrapbook under my bed. I carefully opened it to the first page and to my surprise I smiled. The first photo was of Mike and Jessica with their cheeks pressed together smiling. The second was of Angela with Eric giving her bunny ears. The third was of her swatting his hand away. The fourth was of Tyler and Lauren. Tyler was smiling broadly and had a twinkle in his eye, while Lauren looked bored and a little bitchy. I had forgotten how much I liked Tyler and how much Lauren annoyed me. The fifth was of Charlie watching TV. I remembered jumping around his chair, with a camera taking a bunch of photos of Charlie while he tried to watch the game. Sure enough, the next 2 pages were of Charlie swatting me away with a grin on his face. I was surprised that I was still smiling. The feeling inside me wasn't exactly happy, but it was a feeling. I could actually feel something. I eagerly turned to the next page, and a sudden heavy feeling came crashing down in my chest and I dropped the book quickly and stumbled away from it gasping. On the 4th page, there was a single photo. Charlie had stood in the doorway and took a picture of me on my birthday. Me and Edward. There on a page of my scrapbook. T had rested forgotten under my bed for months was a picture of him. Something solid, and real. A physical memory to hold on to. His bronze hair was purposely gelled to look messy, his golden eyes shone brightly. His pink lips were built in a smile against his razor-sharp teeth, and his pale skin shone like the moon. His beauty was brilliant on the camera, but he was even more beautiful in person. I knew this already. What really surprised me was how I looked. My hair was down and had a slight curl from being up most of the day. It was a shiny chocolate color compared to the wispy rusty color it was now. My skin was pale, but instead of yellow and sickly looking it was a creamy ivory. My brown eyes shone like caramel, rather than the muddy brown they had taken to. I was smiling broadly. I had healthy figure now instead of the skeleton I am now. I never realized how pretty I actually was. I was nothing now. I was just a walking being waiting to die. Maybe it was good that Charlie was sending me away. That way he wouldn't be the one to find my body. I carefully picked the scrapbook off the floor without looking at the pictures and put it at the bottom of my old assignment box that I was bringing. I never wanted to see it again, but I couldn't bear to leave it behind. I didn't stop to look at anything else. I packed everything as quickly as possible. I was done in less than an hour. I carried everything downstairs and put it by the door. I didn't have anything else to do, so I went to living room and it down staring at the blank television. My someone's pouty. James commented, suddenly appearing on Charlie's chair. I'm going to die. I can act however I want. I told him. Yes, that's right, James said with fake surprise. I almost forgot. Lucky you. It's too bad. You are special. It's been interesting to see your attempts to destroy me. Has it? Yes. You're very determined for a human. Although you did give up in the end. I almost killed Charlie. I can't let that happen again. Who's next? Scott. Aunt Melissa. No. I'm giving up. That way no one will be hurt. Except you. Except me. Even now, you'd give your life to save another. You don't understand. It because you haven't lived as long as I have, but it really is something. Out of my entire existence I've never met someone as selfless as you. I didn't respond. What was I supposed to say to that? He was going to kill me. And none of them would do the same. James whispered. You thought you were saving your mother, and when you need her desperately she won't even tolerate a visit. What kind of mother runs from her child? She hates you. That's not true. I yelled, turning towards him. But it is. She's sent you away, and when you need her she sends you even farther. That was Charlie's decision. I spat. Yes. He's sending you away too. He's better though. He at least tried before thrusting his problem on his sister. As long as he's away from you. I told him. There it is again. Ed, if the Cullens were in danger you'd drop everything to save them. I covered my ears and screamed, don't talk to me about them. James actually looked taken aback. You still love them, after all they did to you. Putting you in danger. Almost killing you many times. You don't understand how dangerous a vampire can be. Look at that one boy, Jasper. Hasn't had a slip up in years, and then suddenly he almost kills you in an instant. Then in their own ignorance they leave you, hurting you and leaving you with me. And they never once looked back. It's been months, Bella, they're never coming back. You don't know anything about them. I hissed. Neither do you, Bella. And you don't know anything about me. I cried, turning around to face him. You tend to learn things about someone after being in their head for months. James said grimly. It haunts me, Bella, hearing people's every thoughts, knowing what people are going to do before they do it, listening to people make the wrong decision and not being able to stop them. It's a curse. I stared at James, horrified. He had said it in a boring monotone, as though reading lines from a book that had no meaning to him. Reading lines. It wasn't James's words, they were Edward's. How are you doing that? I asked in a low voice. James smirked. Don't you remember, Bella? We discussed this at length one rainy afternoon, upstairs in your bedroom. I was there, Bella. I was in your head. You discussed me. I spat. You admire me. Bella, ever since you found out about our kind you've wanted to be one. You wanted to be faster, stronger, better. But you can't be, Bella. You love too much. That will only slow you down. Vampires' hearts don't beat for a reason. Maybe for you but not for them. Bella, all vampires are cold, horrific creatures. The Cullens give a good show of caring, but no matter how they look on the outside it's not how they feel on the inside. Even if they wanted to love you, they can't. And that's why they left. Stop it. I hissed, covering my ears. Look at me, Bella. I'm a tracker. Everything I take interest in becomes a game. I track it down and kill it. But I have to be able to ensure the fear, and slow death, and horror. You're sick. Yes, I am. That's what I'm trying to tell you. All vampires are sick. You seem perfect. I whispered. It's a charm vampires carry. It draws prey to us. I wasn't their prey. No, I don't think so. I do think they thought you different and kept you as pet, and after they got bored they left you behind. My body shook and hot tears sprung onto my face. I gritted my teeth. I didn't want to cry in front of James. I stood up and grabbed my keys from the coffee table. I gave the living room one last look. It was last I'd ever see of it. I couldn't bring myself to go back upstairs to my bedroom where there were too many happy memories. I grabbed the boxes and threw them in the back of my truck and pulled the rain tarp over it. Charlie was supposed to send me on a plane tomorrow, but I couldn't stand being in the house anymore. I started the engine, which roared to life. I put my foot on the gas pedal and backed out of the driveway. I was leaving Forks. In Phoenix most of my classmates were rich. And at the end of every year they would all talk about where they were summering. France, Spain, deserted beaches, ballet camps, music lessons exed. Every summer. From the time I was 9-13 I spent my summer in Beacon Hills, California. It wasn't as big as Phoenix, but I preferred it to Forks. It was bigger than Forks. You had to drive to Port Angeles for anything. Beacon Hills had a mall. Charlie and I would stay with Aunt Melissa and her son Scott. Scott was my age, 16. We were closer than my cousins on my mother's side, but still not very close. I used to follow him and his friend Styles around while they got into trouble. We stopped coming when I was 13 because Aunt Melissa made a comment about my mother, which she did not appreciate when I repeated it to her weeks later. I remember them getting into a huge fight and forbidding me to visit. The ride to Beacon Hills was 14 hours. I turned on rap music to help keep me up. This Pitbull guy actually wasn't bad. I stopped in Portland for coffee and to stretch my legs and then went back to the road. It was early in the morning when I arrived in Beacon Hills. I forgot how much forest was around. The green was pretty. The town still looked the same. They added a coffee shop and expanded the mall, but that was it. A small quiet town, free of supernatural. Maybe this would be a nice change. I used Google Maps on my droid to find the way to Aunt Melissa's house. I pulled up in front of a tall familiar house. I shut off the engine, grabbed a bag and walked up to the porch. I raised my hand to knock. The door was pulled open and Aunt Melissa stood there with a huge grin on her face. She looked exactly the same. Dark brown curly hair, brown eyes, ivory skin and white teeth. "Bella," she said happily and pulled me in close for a hug. "Aunt Melissa," I said holding her tight. "I missed you. I missed you more. Come in and have some breakfast." "Thanks." Melissa led me into the kitchen. The house was exactly the same. "You're so skinny. Eat. Now." She slid a plate of eggs in front of me. I tried eating for her sake. Eating is always weird now. It felt odd and I didn't feel hunger. "Sweetie, I haven't seen you in 3 years. Talk to me. What's new?" "Not much." She rolled her eyes. "Not much. Right. You kids are always getting in trouble." "Hey," I said indignantly. "I'm allowed to be suspicious when I'm raising a 16-year-old boy." "Where is Scott?" "Probably with his girlfriend." She smirked. "Scott has a girlfriend. Her name is Allison. Sweet girl. Really pretty." I couldn't help but think of my scrawny little cousin with a girlfriend. "I think it might be getting serious. You can spy on them at school." "When am I starting school?" I asked a little eagerly. It was odd how being with Aunt Melissa was making me happy. "Whenever you get settled. Next week maybe." "How about tomorrow?" I didn't want any free time of my hands. She looked surprised. "A kid who wants to go to school. You sure you're not up to something?" "I'm clean." Aunt Mel looked at the time. "I'm so sorry kiddo, but I have to run. There was a bad accident." She seemed a little hesitant. "What happened?" I asked. "Well honey, I don't want to scare you. I'm a big girl." "Well, there's been some murders here." "Murders?" I asked stunned. "Yes, but don't worry honey, they caught the girl who did it." "What's going to happen to her?" "She died." "What did she do?" "She burned a house down a few years ago and killed 12 people and a few others recently." "Oh my God. And there was another attack." "This one we don't know what happened. It was to Scott's friend Lydia. She's, thank God, going to be okay. But it was close for a while." "Oh my God," I said again. Where did the rest of my words go? "Sweetie, I don't want you to worry. Things will be better now. I guarantee you'll have so little to do you'll be bored." "That actually sounds nice," I told her. "Well, I'll leave you here to unpack, then. You have the same room." "Thanks." "And make my son help if he ever comes back." "Okay." Melissa bent over and kissed my cheek before leaving. I quickly washed my plate and then headed out to my car and carried my belongings inside and headed up to my room. My room was right next to Scott's. It was small but cozy. It had white walls, blue curtains, and race car stickers that Scott and I had decorated the walls with. There was a twin bed tucked in the corner with green butterfly blankets. A white study desk and a white dresser were the only furniture in the room. I unpacked quickly, not looking at anything. There wasn't much to do in the house. I didn't watch TV, I wasn't an active tweeter, Facebooker or Instagrammer. And James was mysteriously absent. I hadn't seen him since I left my house yesterday. It was the longest without I'd been in weeks. It was nice, but I was also cautious. It made me uneasy. I was tired, so I decided to sleep a few hours. I fell asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow. It was already dark when I woke up. I must have slept all day. I shook myself. My throat was dry, so I decided to get a glass of juice. The house was empty and dark. I found my way to the kitchen. The oven clock said it was 11:45. I had slept that late. I poured myself a glass of orange juice. In mid-sip I heard a rummaging sound from behind me. I spun around and saw a hooded black shape shoving up the window. I slowly backed away into the corner quietly. The figure pushed himself through the window and into the house. I grappled for something nearby and found some kind of stick. I gripped it and swung it at him. He yelled and fell over. I screamed, dropped the stick and jumped aside. He turned over so I could see his face. He had curly brown hair, brown eyes, large muscles and ivory skin. Scott, I asked in disbelief. Bella, what the hell? I'm so sorry, I exclaimed, dropping the stick and helping him up. He shook the hair out of his eyes and flipped the light switch on so the room was suddenly flooded with light. What the hell is going on here? Aunt Melissa asked, walking in the room, wearing her hospital uniform still. Bella hit me, Scott tattled. You were coming through the window. I defended myself. Well, I forgot that you were here. Oh, that's a good excuse. Scott, what were you doing out so late? It's a school night. Aunt Melissa reprimanded. I was with Styles, he told her, picking up the stick I hit him with, which now appeared as some kind of sports bat. Ah, my lacrosse stick. You dented it. You dented it, I said back. Styles. Scott. Styles was at the hospital with me and Lydia. Ah, Scott, Aunt Melissa said in a stern voice. Did you go out with Styles to look for Lydia? Look for her? I asked. She escaped, Scott said in a self-defending voice. Was she trapped? I asked, confused. No, Aunt Melissa said quickly. She ran away, and if Scott and his idiot friends went looking for her. No, we just drove around for a bit. In the forest. Mom, were you in the forest, at night? No, Scott said, starting to pull away towards the stairs. Why would you be in the forest? I asked, confused. Yes, that's actually a good question. Aunt Melissa said. Mom, I wasn't in the forest. I have school tomorrow. Yes you do, she said, crossing her arms. So, we're agreed I need sleep and should go upstairs? Scott asked, starting upstairs. Aunt Melissa sighed. Fine, we're talking about this tomorrow though. Okay, love you Mom, he said, bounding up the stairs. Aunt Melissa sighed and then rounded on me. Sleep. Now. I just woke up. Sleep. Oh okay fine. I relented quickly. I ran upstairs, passing Scott's closed door, and entering my room. My empty packing boxes were unneatly thrown in a corner and my bed was unmade. I climbed into it and tried to make myself comfortable. Before I fell asleep I thought I heard a wolf howling. I felt sunlight streaming through my window and I gave a small smile into my warm pillow. The clean linen smell filled my nostrils and I breathed out. Except it was never sunny in Forks and my pillow usually smelled like this horrible pine needle detergent Charlie bought a case of 100 for $20 for. I opened my eyes and sat up. The white walls shined brightly in the sun, blinding me. I smelled coffee brewing downstairs and decided I should get my butt out of bed. I grabbed a towel and a change of clothes from my closet and headed into the downstairs bathroom to shower. The warm water helped me wake up and the little squirt of shampoo that got in my eye also helped. Deciding to let my hair air dry, I quickly changed and headed into the kitchen for breakfast. Scott and Aunt Melissa were already there when I arrived. Mom microwaved breakfast sandwiches. Scott, T said, holding up his plate which had 2.5 ham and cheese. Aunt Melissa smiled, handing me one. I'm taking a later shift this morning but I typically won't be here in the mornings to see you kids off. That's okay. I never see Charlie in the mornings, I told her, biting in my sandwich. Scott, Bella has a car so she can drive you to school this morning. You have a car? Scott asked, his mouth full. Where? There's a piece of crap thing parked across the street. It's the Porsche behind it, I told him sarcastically. Not my fault you drive a broken down truck. It runs. I defended my truck. Yeah sure, he smirked. And how does your car run? What is it, a two-wheeler? Okay, that's enough, Aunt Melissa said firmly. Bella, you still need to get dressed. I am dressed. I was wearing black sweats. And blue hoodie. You're wearing that? She asked. I was going to, I said, suddenly nervous. I might have something you can wear. Oh, no, I protested. Please, she said, giving my outfit another look. I sighed. Okay, great. Aunt Melissa led me into her room. Her room was smaller than mine or Scott's. It had light lavender walls, brown dressers and a mirror door closet. She pulled a few boxes from the back of the closet. I brought some of this stuff down from the attic when I heard you were coming. Thought you might like some of it. She emptied the contents out onto the bed. There were sequins tops, glittered skirts and a few bedazzled bell bottoms. Old band shirts like Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, and Cheap Trick t-shirts had a box to themselves. Neon jackets and leggings, tie-dyed dresses. Well, maybe not. Aunt Melissa said, holding up a pair of Batman leggings. I think I like my hoodie. Oh, there's something here, she said, rummaging through the pile. How about this? She asked, laying out peach jeans, and a black Cheap Trick shirt. Maybe not my style. What style? You dress like a homeless person. Aunt Melissa. And this? A red tank top and black pants. It's nice. She smiled. How conservative is this school? I asked, holding up the back of the pants that said, bitch, in rhinestones. Point taken, she said, grabbing them back. Okay, I think this is the plainest I got. A royal blue cardigan, and black skinny jeans. I like it, I told her. I might have some jewelry too, she said excitedly. Oh goody, I said quietly, as she left the room for the jewelry. I quickly changed into the outfit. I looked in the mirror, not bad. Here's a silver bracelet and hoops. Aunt Melissa said, coming back into the room. Oh no, what if I lost it? I bought it for 25 cents. You lose it, pay up, she said. Okay, I said, putting on the jewelry. The link for the outfit is CGI set. It equals 70,571,794. Let me braid your hair, she asked. Sure. I sat down and she went to work. I usually don't put too much work into my appearance, I told her, fiddling with the silver bracelet. You've been living with Charlie too long. He ever comb his hair? What's left of it? I answered, giggling. Done, she said, handing me a mirror. Wow, I said, impressed. It looked really nice. And a little makeup, she wheedled. No, I said, standing up. Bella, please. Just a little. I have a 16-year-old son. I'm forever single, there's no more kids shooting out of there. If you promise never to talk about there, ever again, then okay. I have some here, she said, rummaging through a silver purse. She put on a light coat of mascara, a light beige eyeshadow, and a light shade of gloss. She stood me up and showed me in the mirror. Wow, I breathed. She did a good job. I looked good. Not gorgeous, but closer to what I used to be. You look beautiful, she smiled, giving me a hug. I should get going. School, you know. Have fun, sweetie. I gave myself one more look in the mirror and then headed to the kitchen. Oh God, what did she do to you? Scott asked, raising his eyebrow. I like it, so shut it. Are we going to school or not? Let's go, Fisher-Price. Thankfully my truck started up fine. Scott directed me to the school. It wasn't that far, but I felt a nervous feeling in the pit of my stomach. How could Beacon Hills be called a small town? The school was huge. A large sports field, school buildings, club buildings, and the main building, which was twice the size of Forks High. I got a few stares at the sound of my truck. I led into a space and hopped out of the car. The office is that way, Scott pointed to the main part of the buildings. I'll save you a seat at lunch. He ran off to meet one of his friends. Scott, I yelled after him. Great cousin you are, I whispered. I walked towards the office and passed by Scott and resisted the urge to flick him in the back of the head. He was talking to some guy with AC. Cut and wearing a t-shirt and a plaid shirt over it. He and Scott were talking about something seriously. Wait, was that Styles? He seemed to be using his body to tell Scott a story. He looked the same and yet different at the same time. I kept walking towards the office. The school doors were opened and I was jostled in the crowd. I found myself pushed right into the office door. Great, still clumsy. Hi, may I help you? A kind middle-aged brown-haired lady asked at the front desk. Yes, I'm Bella Swan. I'm new. Oh yes, your aunt called, she said, rummaging through her files and pulling out one with the name Bella Swan. Here, this has your class schedule, your locker combination, and a map. Thank you. Here's a slip I need you to present to your teachers and deliver back to me at the end of the day. Okay, I said, pocketing the slip. Here are your course books, she said, handing me a dozen. Okay, I said, trying not to stumble under the weight. I can walk you to your locker and then your first class, she offered kindly. I can find it okay, I think, I told her and thanked her. I must have looked like such a new girl with all the books in my hand. My locker was in the middle of the school. Great, it was in the middle of the row and had nothing memorable in sight. Need help? A boy with a locker next to me asked. He had gray eyes, curly dirty blonde hair and was tall and lean. He had a black bruise over his left eye. Desperately, I told him. He took the books out of my hands easily. Was I really that weak? Thank you, I said hurriedly, unlocking my locker and popping it open. He stacked them into my locker. No problem. I'm Isaac Leahy, he said quietly. I'm Bella Swan. You're new here. However did you guess? I smiled. I have keen insight. I have no sight. I have no idea how I'm going to get around. You first class is history, he said, reading my schedule. It's on my way to lacrosse practice. I can walk you there. Thank you, I said gratefully. He shouldered his lacrosse gear and led me to class. You play lacrosse? I asked. Yeah, first line. Is that a good line? I asked, feeling a little stupid. Yeah, he laughed. I don't know much about lacrosse, sorry. They had basketball at my old school. I didn't know much about basketball either though. He laughed. Not very sporty then. More like I'm so clumsy that I physically repel sports. Uh-huh. He nodded. Well, here we are. We stopped right outside a door. Thank you. Have fun with your lacrosse thing. Have fun with your clumsy thing. Wish me luck. I took a deep breath and entered the room. It was a nice-sized classroom with lots of chattering students. No one looked up as I entered the classroom. That was good. I walked over to the teacher and handed him the slip. He signed it cheerfully, welcoming me to Beacon Hills, bringing my presence to everyone's attention. There's a free seat right here, Mr. Garrett said, pointing out a seat next to a girl with dyed blonde hair. Okay. I sat into my seat and took out everything I needed for class and started arranging them neatly. Hey, I'm Chrissy. The fake blonde next to me smiled. Hi, I'm Bella. So Bella, what brings you to Beacon Hills? I just moved in with my aunt and cousin. Parents kick you out? She asked, a little pushy. She sent a text to someone with her neon manicured nails and looked at a girl across the room whose phone buzzed. The other girl was a clone with a slightly lighter fake tan. Change of scenery, I told her shortly. From Washington. Doesn't it rain there like a lot? 24/7. Well then you're going to love Cali. It's a little chilly now, but it's supposed to be warmer this weekend. You and I should totes hang out. Totes, I said with false enthusiasm which she didn't catch. We were cut off when the door opened and a girl with long black hair and brown eyes entered the class late. Please have a seat, Ms. Argent. Mr. Garrett told her kindly. If I walked in late, he'd give me a detention. Chrissy whispered scornfully. He's only being nice because of her aunt. What about her aunt? I asked, looking at her. She seemed normal to me. You didn't hear? She asked, raising her eyebrows and flashed her white teeth. Her aunt is a psycho. A few years ago she set a house on fire and 12 people were killed, and then the past few weeks she murdered all these people brutally. Bloody and gross, and they even had bite marks on them, like she was trying to eat them. How disgusting is that? Yeah, that's gross, I said quietly. However, Chrissy had no trouble keeping her voice down. And I sit next to Allison in English. She hissed as though I was supposed to feel scared for her. So, I asked her in a rough voice. This girl was acting like a total bitch. Whatever. She snorted. The rest of the class passed by quietly. And when the bell rang, she jumped up and ran over to her friend and started talking quickly, and I heard her mention me as a freak. Great start to the next 2 years, I thought dully. The rest of the day kept me busy. Most of the teachers were nice in helping me out with the course plan and what to study. I was picking everything up pretty quickly. The only problem was free period. I was told to go to the library, but spitting out gum into the map wasn't the smartest idea. So, now I was just walking around the school randomly, hitting lockers with a folder I took out of my bag, leaving it unzipped, which proved to be a mistake when I turned the corner and ran into something very solid. I fell backwards and everything from my bag went flying. Here, let me help, a deep man's voice said. He was what I ran into. He had green eyes, a little stubbly beard, bushy eyebrows, white teeth, black hair and a grumpy expression. He was wearing dark jeans and a black leather jacket. He was hot. He looked too old to be in high school. I'm so sorry. I apologized. He didn't answer. His hand suddenly shot out so fast it was a blur and grabbed hold of my wrist. He was staring at the scar James left me in amazement. My stomach dropped. He was just being rude, right? There was no way he could possibly know what it really was, right? He ran his rough fingers over the scar, which was drastically cold to a normal human's temperature. I should have pulled away by now, but I couldn't. Suddenly he pulled his hand away and stood up, turned the corner and walked away. Wah. Wait, I yelled, shoving everything in my bag and running after him. I turned the corner but he was gone. How did he leave so fast? The bell rang and people started coming out of their classes. I took a shaky breath and spun around and headed towards chemistry. Bella Swan, the teacher at the front said as I walked in. I guess news traveled fast here too. Yes, I'm Mr. Harris. I am your chemistry teacher. I've read your file and upon seeing your previous grades, I've seating you next to Mr. Stilinski right here, in desperate hopes that maybe his grades will rise by contact with you. He told me and steered me to next to Styles. Mr. McCall, you can move over there. Mr. Harris said, moving Scott in front of me. He gave a vague annoyed face and moved. He and Styles were talking all day. What was so important? Styles, I said with a smile. Bella, he looked shocked. Wow, you grew up. He eyed me, lingering over my chest. I blushed. Thank you, Styles. Nice shirt, by the way. Motioning to his t-shirt that said, I support single moms, and had an image of a stick figure pole dancing. Yeah, so about this contact with each other. Styles. Yeah, you can be quiet now. Hey Bella, Scott said, turning around to face me. Good first day. The best, I said sarcastically, flipping open my book. Settle down, class. Mr. Harris called out. Pop quiz, everybody. The entire class groaned as Mr. Harris passed down the sheets. I stared at the words on my test but nothing registered. Who was he? Did he know what my scar was? Was he a vampire? No, he was human. He was normal. He couldn't possibly know what a vampire bite was or what it looked like. Or could he? Was it possible I walked from one supernatural town to the next? Was I that unlucky? I was distracted from my mental argument by Styles leaning over and whispering to Scott, "Alright, it's causing me severe mental anguish to say this, but Jackson's right." I know, Scott whispered. They were speaking in low voices but I could still hear them. What if the next body part she steals is from someone who's alive? What the hell? I thought. Stealing body parts. What was Scott doing? This is a pop quiz, Mr. Stilinski. Mr. Harris interrupted, alerting everyone's attention to him. If I hear your voice again, I may be tempted to give you detention for the rest of your high school career. Can you do that? Styles asked, looking interested. Well, there it is again, your voice. Triggering the only impulse I've ever had to strike a student repeatedly, and violently. There was a pause while the class laughed. I'll see you at 3 for detention. Styles starting mouthing protests and Scott turned around. You too, Mr. McCall? Mr. Harris asked. No sir, he replied. Wow, I whispered, as Styles started drawing violent scenes as his answer to number 14. There was a loud clatter as a boy from the back of the class ran out of the classroom and his hand over his nose. Was that blood on his face? Mr. Whitmore. Mr. Harris called out. I blinked. What was going on here? I took a deep breath and focused on my test. This was an interesting day. After school ended I opt my sign slip off at the principal's office and then went to my truck. Passerby stared as my truck roared to life. The old girl was tired from the long drive to Beacon Hills. I should really try and find a mechanic soon and check out everything. I threw my backpack in the passenger seat and started out of my parking space and abruptly stopped. Across the lacrosse field, near the forest, I caught a glimpse of the man from earlier. He was staring directly at me. I blinked and suddenly he was gone. I looked all around me but he was nowhere in sight. Car horns honked and I quickly shook my head and drove away. Hard day? James asked from the passenger side seat. I swerved car and almost hit another car. You've been gone a while. Yes, you've kept me out. What did you do? He asked, looking carefully upset and curious. I felt stunned. I haven't done anything. He looked surprised. You must have something. No. I shook my head, still stunned. Nothing. Well, I'm back now. He said. Welcome to Beacon Hills. I told him shortly. I take it you're not enjoying it. I was, until this jackass vampire showed up. No need for names, Bella. You're my murderer. I think I have a right to call you any name that comes to mind. Yet you stick with jackass. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The next few days were hard. My time was coming to a close. James was becoming torture. It was late at a few weeks after I started at Beacon Hills that I woke up in the middle of the night screaming from a nightmare. The room was cold but I was panting and sweating. I looked down at my pillow and there was blood all over it. I stumbled out of my bed slowly, and fell on the floor, the ability to stand not available. I crawled a few feet to the mirror near the closet and saw that there was gooey red blood gushing out of nose and painfully dripping from my ears. The blood almost looked black in the dark light. I threw up. I couldn't help it. The sight of me was just so awful. Oh, I've missed this. I can feel it. Your pain, your fear, even your disgust. The emotions are so brilliantly tasteful. It almost fulfills the endless hunger. James said, standing next to me looking healthy and full. What did you do? I gasped, coughing up blood and vomit and spitting on the floor. It's your body weakening. I'm so close. I can feel it. It's beautiful. You're disgusting. I gasped, coughing up blood onto the carpet. Really? James asked, walking behind me where I was on all fours, unable to look away from the mirror. Look at us. Which one is disgusting? In my white tank top, splattered with blood. You were able to see my clearly defined ribs and bones. I hadn't eaten in days. Weeks without eating more than a meal and throwing it up. I was barely alive. James, however, was the vision of health. His form had steadily gotten better while I got worse. His muscles seemed bigger and more defined than when he was still a vampire. His hair long, and his eyes a bright growing red. It's amazing, but it's still you. I spat out, choking on some blood. James smiled and kneeled down next to me and smiled. You're lying. I turned and looked him in the eyes. I'm not. He smirked, and pushed some of my hair out of my eyes. His touch was ice cold. Yes, you are. You've been told before that you're not a good liar. That goes beyond just the words. Your heart has a teeny, tiny, TTLE stutter that only vampires can pick up, whenever you tell a single lie. Your point? I asked, pushing myself from all fours to a sitting position leaning against my bed frame. Oh, my point is long-winded. You think I don't care about myself. I replied, wiping blood from my ears. I know you don't. If I didn't care about myself, why would you still be here? Because you still think people care about you. They do. No. Quote. They don't. James. Yes. Would you care to fucking give me an explanation? You know, I was never fond of swearing. Especially from a young lady. Yay. Swearing is vulgar, but killing someone and drinking their blood is good clean fun. I replied sarcastically. James looked at me for a long moment. Well, I see someone is having their time of the month. I punched him. James let out a hiss as he flinched away. I hit you. I laughed for the first time in months. James turned to me and growled, his teeth bared but his fangs weren't out. What gonna do bout it, bad boy? I said, smirking at him. He inched closer to me and slapped me across the face. There was a sting, but it wouldn't bruise. Well, that was obvious. I stared him in the eyes, still having a crazy smile. Do your worst. You're weak too. Didn't even break a bone. Big strong vampire, like you. I gave a glimpse to his downstairs, not so big anymore. He growled and threw me across the floor. I laughed again. I'd heal you, little boy. James never did finish that sentence. He suddenly disappeared when there was a knock on the door. I looked around the room shocked. James never left. Bella. Scott's voice called through the door. Yeah, I said, blushing, realizing I probably sounded like a maniac laughing to myself. I need to pick up some stuff from the store. Can you give me a ride? I looked over at the clock. It was 10:30 at night. Curfew wasn't for another hour and a half. What do you need? A new charger for my phone. You can't wait till morning. I need it now. I sighed. Give me a minute to clean up. There was silence. Clean up what? Do you really want to know? I said, giving him a minute. Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, I'll be waiting on the porch. Sorry for interrupting. Sorry. I heard him dart away. I rolled my eyes. I grabbed a change of clothes and a towel and ran to the downstairs bathroom. I quickly washed my face and body wherever the blood touched me. I changed into a baggy t-shirt and sweatpants. I think I wore this to school yesterday. And the day before, actually. And the day before that. You ready to go? I asked Scott as I reached the porch, locking the front door behind me. Yeah, he said, avoiding eye contact. I wasn't touching myself, dumbass. I said, rolling my eyes again. Oh, he said, meeting my eyes this time. He gave me a small smile. Let's go then. Quote. Time lapse. We seriously had to drive all the way to the city. I really needed a charger. Scott said, poking through the electronics section at Walmart. It couldn't wait till morning. I need to be by the phone. He said, finding the one he needed and walking to the cashier. Come on, let's go. I said, looking at the time on my phone. I need to let it charge a bit first. Scott said, after paying for it and ripping it out of the package and then sitting by the wall and plugging it on. Seriously? I asked. 20 minutes. He pleaded. I sighed. Fine. I'm going to go buy a soda at the McDonald's across the street. Yeah, cool. Scott said, tapping his phone. See ya. It was raining out. I held my hoodie close to me. The McDonald's was a little farther than I thought. I could see it a few blocks down. I sighed and started heading that way. I paused when I saw a few drunken guys stumbling out of a bar, holding on to each other laughing. One of Hem noticed and called out to me, but I didn't hear over the rain. I was assaulted by the image of another night and a bunch of drunken guys throwing a bottle over my head, calling out names to me. One of them grabbed me. A silver Volvo came speeding into the lot. A furious melodic voice said, "Get in." I shook my head as the images drained out. The men were standing under a canopy trying to hail a cab. They weren't going to cause me any harm, but I still didn't want to pass them. I retreated a few more steps and then saw an alley that I could cut through. I darted into it and hid under a fire escape to block the rain. That night all those months ago could have been bad. It could have been horrible actually. I imagined a bunch of men groping me. Bile rose in my throat. But Edward was there. I swallowed and my heart ripped at the thought. Edward was there to save me. My hero. But he wasn't here to protect me now. No one was. James was right. I started crying at the thought as the rain picked up. My tears and the rain were having a race. A sob ripped from my throat. A real true sob. I hadn't had a good cry since that night about him. I didn't have time to mourn. He wasn't dead, but he might as well be. My time was coming to a close. I'd never see Edward again. It never felt absolutely real until now. I'd never get to ride in his Volvo again. I'd never hear him play again. I'd never go to his mansion again. I'd never see Alice again. I'd never be a part of his family. I'd never have a real family. I cried even harder, barely able to breathe now. My vision started to blur. I tried ipping my eyes with my hoodie and blinked around. I stiffened. There was a figure down at the end of the alley. It was blurred and tall and muscular. I couldn't make out any other features. I tried quit hoping that it was just an innocent homeless man looking for cover. But he was staring at me. I could feel his eyes looking into me. I fumbled for my pepper spray before remembering I didn't have it. He started moving closer. I slowly started to back away. Just a homeless man, I reminded myself. He was just looking for cover. The rain was pounding hard on me while I backed away. Just a homeless man, I thought once more. Nothing to worry about. The figure suddenly crouched down to all fours and then leapt to the wall near me and started climbing it like a spider. Definitely not a homeless man, I thought. I turned around and ran, screaming at the top of my lungs. I couldn't help it. I screamed as loud as I could, running out of the alley. I ran into something solid and two warm arms reached down and pulled me up. I tried struggling out of the person's arms, still screaming and crying. Bella, it's me, Scott, it's Scott, Scott said as I stopped struggling. Scott, I croaked, my throat sore. Yes, Bella, what happened? I thought I saw something. Bella, Scott pushed me away a little, and looked me seriously in the eye. What did you see? I don't know. I think it was just some homeless man. He was coming at me though. I lied. If I was right and whatever the hell that was supernatural, then I couldn't bring Scott into that world. Come on, let's go back to your truck. I'll drive, Scott said, leading me to my car. I was still crying so much. Scott lifted me into the passenger side of the truck and then ran to the other side and started my car and cranked the heat up. He reached behind me into the backseat and pulled out a sweatshirt and started drying me off with it, and then pulled me into a hug. Bella, shush, you're okay. It was just a man. It's not that, I choked out. Then what is it? Bella, it's your cousin Scott. Come on, I'm like your baby brother. I snuggled in tighter to his warm chest, embracing the warmth and brotherly comfort. Something I really needed. Have you ever had a secret, so big that it hurts to keep to yourself? Something that takes over your life in more than one way. Something that you want so badly to share. But you can't. Because they can't know. It's not a burden that you can put on someone else. I asked. Scott took a moment to respond. I understand. I doubt we're talking about the same kind of issues, but I understand. You know I'm always here though. I'll be here. Scott. Yeah, you're a great cousin. I love you. Love you too, Bells. Go to sleep. I'll wake you up when we're there. Time lapse. When I woke up, I was laying in my bed. I wondered for a moment if it was all a dream, but then I realized I was wearing the clothes from last night and they were still damp. Scott must have carried me. That was sweet of him. I quickly brushed my teeth and got dressed, wincing every once in a while because I was still sore from the ordeal last night. I walked downstairs grabbing a bottle of ginger ale from under bed to stop the stomach cramps. Scott had already left, so I just had to drive myself to school. I grabbed my school bag. I hadn't done any homework. Screw me. I walked into the high school. Tripping on my way in. I got some stares. I didn't exactly look the best right now. I opened my locker, threw in my stuff. Isaac was standing next to me and looked over. That was when it happened. He stiffened as he stared at me, giving me a look of disgust, almost. He turned into his locker and started having a coughing fit, and then he started shaking. Isaac, you okay? I asked. He continued coughing. What are you? He asked, in a deep rumbling voice that made the locker tremble. Then I realized he was growling. What? I asked, confused. You smell so intense. Stay away from me. I don't care what you are. Stay away. He growled again and then swiftly walked away. I slammed my locker and walked away. I saw Scott's girlfriend Allison and her friend Lydia walking through the halls. Lydia had been found a few days before. And apparently Scott wasn't dating Allison anymore, but it was obvious how much they loved each other. Probably more than Edward and I loved each other. What is that? Lydia asked Allison, staring at me. I didn't realize I had stopped walking and was just standing there staring at them. Lydia, Allison said. What? It's just staring at us. She's Scott's cousin. She's an anorexic druggie. I walked away after that. I decided to skip first period and just watch lacrosse practice. I sat down and opened my copy of Wuthering Heights and started reading. I was brought out of it when there was a crashing sound. Scott and some other guy were on the ground and Scott was. Was Scott actually sniffing him? Scott helped the guy up and brushed himself off. The lacrosse coach shouted. McCall. Yeah, Scott asked. Usually the goalie stays somewhere within the vicinity of the actual goal. Yes, coach. Let's try it again. I watched as Scott ran back the goal. And as soon as another player ran out, Scott ran out to meet him and they knocked into each other in the air, and then Scott ran over and sniffed him again. The coach yelled again, McCall. The position's goalkeeper, not goal abandoner. Sorry, coach. The coach walked up to Stiles, pulled him close and started yelling, Stilinski, what the hell is wrong with your friend? He's failing 2 classes. He's a little socially awkward and if you look close enough, his jawline's kind of uneven. Stiles answered. Interesting. Let's fire it up. The coach said back. That one gay kid, Danny, ran up the goal and Scott ran up to meet him. They knocked together in the air. And then Scott climbed on top of him and started to sniff him again. The coach yelled again, McCall. You come out of that goal one more time and you'll be doing suicide runs till you die. It'll be the first ever suicide run that actually ends in a suicide. Got it? Yes, coach. Scott replied, heading back to the goal. That one guy, Jackson, sat out, and then Isaac came running to the goal and Scott ran out to meet him and their bodies clashed in midair, making a booming sound. They landed on all fours, breathing heavily and staring at each other. No one was paying attention though. They were paying attention, the police officers walking across the fields. I recognized Stiles' dad even from a distance. They stopped to talk to the coach while Stiles ran to Scott. I felt a pair of eyes and I looked right into the forest. Standing there was that guy the first physically ran into my first day at Beacon Hills. He made direct eye contact with me. I stared back. He broke the gaze to look over at the police who had Isaac run up to them, and when I turned back my gaze to the man, he was gone. I blinked. I packed up my stuff and decided to just wait outside my next class. Time lapse. I was sitting in chemistry class later in the day, quickly scribbling in answers for my homework when Scott slid in the seat in front of me. And Styles next to me. "Hey Bells," he said, looking over and flashing a smile. "Hey," I said, inwardly pleased at the use of my childhood nickname. "Bella, you okay?" he asked, suddenly looking very serious. "Yeah, why? You're twitching all over," he said. I looked down at my paper. My handwriting was all over the place and barely legible. My hand was twitching so bad that I dropped the pencil, which rolled over to Scott's chair. He bent down and picked it up for me and put it on the desk and then grabbed my arm to steady me. "Bella, you okay?" he asked. "Yeah, just a little too much caffeine, I guess," I replied. "Bella?" Styles asked, his face serious. "Yes. What's that on your arm?" I looked down at my right arm. My hoodie had slid down my arm, and my wrist was uncovered. Styles and Scott were staring right at the granite crescent-shaped scar that James had left last spring. I whipped my hand out of Scott's grip and rolled my sleeve back down. "It's a scar from a dog bite," I lied. "What kind of dog?" Scott asked. "A big dog," I sarcastically replied. "Settle down, class. Mr. Harris said as he walked into the room and started sorting through papers at his desk. "Bella, you need to do me a favor," Styles said quietly. "Styles, I said no when we were 12, and I'm saying no now. Not that, although if you change your mind." Styles. "Okay, you need to stay home tonight." "What?" Scott turned around to face me. "Bella, promise us that you'll stay home tonight." I looked at both of them and then nodded. "Okay, fine, I promise." After they turned away, I bent down over my paper and started erasing and then carefully writing in the correct answers in legible handwriting. Time lapse. My poor truck. My poor truck. Poor Wilma. It was late after school, the sun almost down. And I was sitting in the sheriff's station waiting room. I had been driving home when my truck's engine spluttered and died. Poor Wilma. I may have named my truck Sherry. F.F. Stilinski had seen me desperately trying to fix my truck by poking the engine with a stick, and called a tow truck for me and then drove me to the station, telling me that he'd give me a ride after his shift. Sheriff Stilinski and my dad had been good friends in the summers. I think he'd promised my dad to look out for me. "Hey Bella," Sheriff Stilinski said, coming up to me, "I just got a call I got to take. Do you want me to call someone to pick you up or wait for a ride home?" "I guess I'll just wait," I said. I watched him walk out of the station and another officer walk in, limping a little and carrying a box. A delicious scent filled the air and my stomach gave a small growl. I shook my head and sighed, flipped my book open again, and started reading. My mind couldn't focus though. There was a prickling sensation in the back of my mind. I put my hand on the back of my head, shifting in my seat a little. It felt like something was moving around my head. I let out a small sigh, and I looked up and flinched. There in the reflection in the window across the room was of James. He was sitting in my seat was James. He smirked, and gave me a wink, and I closed my eyes and sat as close to the back of my chair as I could, and waited to feel the cold touch of his skin and to hear his disgusting slimy voice. It didn't come. I slowly opened my eyes and he was gone. I breathed a sigh out as the door swung open and he came in. The man I had bumped into in the hall and locked eyes with across the lacrosse field today. He walked in and his piercing green eyes met my dull brown eye. And I felt a flutter in the pit of my stomach. A memory of James's voice floated through my head, strongly attracted. I shivered a little. I was not strongly attracted to anyone. He passed by me and made his way to the front desk. A tall female black girl walked into the room shuffling papers in her hand. "Good evening, how can I help?" She looked up then and saw him. "You." She finished, her voice a lot more flirtatious. I snorted a little. They ignored me. "Hi," the man said, flashing his bright white teeth. "Hi." The girl smiled back. I had a question." Sorry, I'm a little thrown. I wasn't really expecting someone," he said, leaning on the counter a little. "Like me," she supplied. "Oh, I was gonna say, so incredibly beautiful, but, yeah, I guess that'd be the same thing." I snorted again, this time a little louder. They looked at me and the officer gave me a glare and the man smirked a little. As they resumed their flirting, I looked up across the room and saw Styles sneaking past them. So I had to stay in tonight, but Styles could sneak into the police station. I dropped my book on my bag and stood up. The girl looked at me with a raised eyebrow. Bathroom. I lied, walking away briskly. Stupid bitch, I thought. I half jogged up the hallway to catch up to Styles. Styles. I hissed. He spun around so quick he stumbled a little. Bella. He said surprised. What the hell are you doing here? My truck broke down and your dad was supposed to give me a ride home. What's your excuse? I asked. My excuse? Well, it's definitely an excuse, and a good one at that. Then what is it? I haven't thought of that yet. What are you going to do, Styles? Something dangerous. Well then, I smiled. You'll need help. I walked past him, swinging my hips a little. Bella. Styles said, walking after me. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Like, not even a clue. This is really dangerous stuff. I looked at him. Then you have no time to waste. He sighed loudly. Fine, this way. I walked behind him for a little while, kind of enjoying this little rebellious act. So, what are we doing exactly? I asked, figuring that we were going to steal pot from the dog training room. Or grab keys to buildings around Beacon Hills. We're breaking out Isaac Leahy. What? I asked loudly. Shish, he said, still walking. We're breaking out Isaac. He's locked up for murder. And after the way he was behaving this morning, I wouldn't put it past him. He's innocent. How did he act this morning? He started freaking out around me, and told me to stay away from him. And that I smelled weird. I added as an afterthought. Smelled weird. He stopped, and stared at me for a second before leaning in and sniffed me. I stepped away. Styles. I don't know what he's talking about. You smell fine. Okay, well thanks for clearing that up. Now why the hell are we breaking Isaac out of jail? Styles stopped at a door, with one of those locks on for sale houses. He's not safe. Not safe. Not safe. Styles, what isn't he safe from? You know Bells, there was a reason Scott and I told you to stay in tonight. Yeah, I can see why. You two are breaking someone out of jail. Keep your voice down. He spazzed for a second and then started to punch in numbers. Where is Scott, anyway? Hopefully chained somewhere indoors. What? I asked, as the keypad fell out and it was empty. Oh no, he said, giving me a shushing motion, and then started quickly down the hall. Are you friends with the guy who was flirting with the officer up front? Who, Derek? Friends is definitely not the word I'd use. We turned the corner and ran into the officer who came in earlier, limping. He held a syringe in his hand. Oh, sorry, just looking, Styles tarted, and then his eyes fell on the syringe. Oh he started to run and the officer grabbed him and covered his mouth and started pulling him back. I opened my mouth to scream for help when the not officer punched me in the face and knocked me into the wall. I fell down hard, and kept quiet, dazed, and pretended to be knocked out. The officer continued to drag a struggling Styles farther into the building. I waited a minute after they left and considered my options. I could run to the front and shout for help, at an empty police station, or I could go after them myself and maybe do some damage. Somehow, I decided to go with latter. I couldn't leave Styles alone. I slowly pushed myself up and ran after them. I arrived just as the not officer threw Styles onto the floor of a room that appeared to be a holding cell. The not officer saw me and threw me onto the ground, and I landed painfully on my hip. The not officer was sweating heavily and an arrow was stuck in his leg which was bleeding heavily. An arrow. The door to a smaller room inside the room, the actual holding cell, I guessed was pried off and red flashing lights were blaring around the room, half blinding me. Styles, you okay? I said, my voice high from pain. Yeah, he said, staring at the holding cell. The realization that a big heavy iron door was pried off, and Isaac was missing just hit me. What the hell was going on? What did I get myself into? Before I could say anything else, a skinny figure slammed into the not officer, pinning him against the wall. Isaac, I said out loud, and I glimpsed his face. I couldn't scream even though I'm pretty sure that's what I was supposed to do. His eyes were a creepy glowing yellow color, that sent shivers down my spine, and his face was covered in hair that wasn't there this morning. His nails were long and dog-like, and he had fangs. Werewolf, I said. It was so damn obvious, I could have kicked myself. You know, Styles said, looking at me in surprise. Just found out. I breathed back. Isaac threw the guy across the room and Styles grabbed my hand and pulled me backwards into a corner. He's killing him, Styles. I said, my voice a few octaves too high. Him and the guy were heavily wrestling. Isaac trying to scratch him with his nails and the guy trying to put the syringe in him. Isaac twisted his arm and the syringe fell to the ground and rolled towards us. Isaac let out a growl that hurt my ears. Isaac banged his head into the wall and knocked him out and started to bend over him. A foot stomped on the syringe, breaking it and spilling the contents on the floor, and I had a sudden pang of hunger again. Isaac turned around and let out another growl, towards the man whose foot broke the syringe. Derek. This led Isaac's eyes to Styles and I, and he started towards us. Styles backed up against the wall and his arms reached out and pulled me back with him. Isaac didn't take more than a few steps before Derek's eyes turned completely red and he let out an ear-splitting growl that shook the room, and the power and authority of it rang out through my bones. There was something more to that growl. There was a command. Isaac flinched away, whining into a corner, hands covering his face. Isaac looked up a second later, his face back to normal but pale and covered in sweat. Styles released his grip and looked at Derek. "How'd you do that?" he asked. Derek turned toward us with a hint of arrogance. "I'm the Alpha. Alpha. Poison. Werewolves." My head was spinning. Derek held his hand out and Styles started to reach for it before Derek kicked him and made eye contact with me. His eyes were now green again. Beautiful green. I still felt an aura of power radiating from him. He's the Alpha. I took his hand and I felt a spark of electricity shoot through me. He pulled me up, a little closer to his face than I think he intended. His eyes flashed to our intertwined hands, and to the vampire bite scar. He knew what it is. Maybe he knew what I was, or what I was turning into. "You're Bella," he said. "You're Derek," I replied, tossing my hair back with a flip of my head. Our hands were still together. "I'm Styles, that's Isaac, and that's a passed-out Argent," Styles said, bringing us back. He pulled his hand away. "I'm taking Isaac away. Think of something for this," he said, gesturing around the room. "Think of something, think of Somethi. Ing to explain a destroyed holding cell and a missing person of interest." Styles yelled. "Yes," Derek said, walking over to Isaac and pulling him up by his shirt and striding out of the room. "Great," Styles muttered. "Jackass. So, werewolves," I said, turning to him. He looked at me and nodded. "Yeah, werewolves. You okay? I've dealt with this stuff before." "Werewolves. Vampires, actually." "The vampires?" he asked, his eyes wide. "Yep," I nodded, putting my hands in my pocket. "Are you a vampire?" "Nope." "Are you anything?" I looked down at my shrunken, weak body. "I don't know." "Okay." "Styles. So is it just Derek and Isaac who are werewolves?" "Well, Scott is." "Scott?" I asked. "Yes, and then Jackson, and maybe Lydia." "Well, it's bad." "Bad? Yeah, well, that guy right there." Styles pointed at the not officer on the ground. "Is a werewolf hunter. That's what Scott's girlfriend's family does." "Oh, that's well, that blows," I said. Just then, Sheriff Stilinski and a few other officers walked in and took a look at the ripped-apart room, the knocked-out body of the not officer, and the missing Isaac. Styles and I looked at each other and then around the room, thinking fast. We both pointed to the officer and said, "Ah, he did it," at the same time. So Beacon Hills was not the quite normal town I was hoping for. However, this night made me feel more alive than I have in months. So I guess I just had to get used to my new life, which consisted of werewolves, hunters, an alpha werewolf I may be attracted to, becoming more myself, and getting rid of James. That was priority number one. James would rule my life no more. I'd be stronger than him. I'm not just going to win this battle, I'm going to win this war. Synopsis of Shape-Shifted, where the chapter takes place. Isaac and his father get into a fight over the young man's grades. It becomes violent with Mr. Leahy throwing dishes and plates around. One of the glass pitchers crashes into the wall above Isaac's head, cutting his cheek. When he stands up, his face begins to heal and his father is perplexed. Isaac runs away. His father follows and finds his bike out in the rain. Mr. Leahy is attacked and killed by an unknown creature. This is the creature Bella sees at the beginning of the chapter in the alley. Scott and Allison Argent have a clandestine meeting in the woods while Chris and Victoria Argent are on a date night. The parents are actually busy kidnapping and torturing Beacon Hills High School's principal. At school the next day, Scott smells another werewolf in the locker room and a T attempts to figure out which of his teammates has been turned by smelling each of them on the lacrosse field. He figures out that it is Isaac just before Sheriff Stilinski arrives to inform the team that his father is dead. Bella is watching and locks eyes with Derek. Scott and Stiles purposely get themselves in trouble so they can go to the principal's office to hear Jackson's statement to the sheriff. Jackson confirms that Isaac was being beaten regularly by his father. Once the authorities leave, they learn that Allison's grandfather, Gerard, has taken the principal's place. Isaac is taken to jail. Derek shows up and asks Scott to help him break him out. First though, they go to Isaac's house and find evidence that his dad's abuse included locking him in a freezer chest. Allison witnesses her father and grandfather planning to kill Isaac. She tells Stiles that one of the hunters, dressed as a deputy, left the house with a box marked with a wolfsbane plant. Allison manages to slow down T. He assassin by shooting his tires and his leg with arrows. This is the officer Bella and Stiles encounter in the station. Derek and Stiles attempt to free Isaac, but the hunter is already there. When they reach the holding cell, they find it empty. Isaac takes out the hunter, then turns on Stiles until Derek growls him into submission with his alpha powers. Allison finds Scott in Isaac's basement. He brings chains to keep him under control during the full moon. She locks him in the freezer. As she is leaving, Allison is attacked by an unidentified human-sized lizard-like creature. Hearing that Allison is in danger, Scott manages to bust out of the freezer and come to help her. The lizard creature escapes. Jackson filmed himself all night long during the full moon expecting to catch his furs. T transformation into a werewolf on video, but instead got several hours of footage of himself, very much still a human, sleeping. The end.